Hello friends. Welcome to the Eastern Front channel. Today we will talk with you about the memoirs of Friedrich Paulus adjutant, Arno von Lenski, who fought with Paulus until he was captured in 1943. Renewed ringing got me up from my mattress. The command of the army group wanted to know what new had happened in the area of Kyra. Situation unaltered, I replied, and how does it look on the rest of the army's front? The 11th Corps and the 14th Panzer Corps are fighting with their backs to the Don. The 4th Corps stands at Stalingrad with the front facing south in hard defensive fighting. Since his arrival, Paulus has been consulting with all available commanding generals. Unanimously they propose to revise the appeal to bring the 6th Army back over the Don. The army group also sees no other way out and has strongly supported the proposal. A short while ago the answer came from Führer headquarters. Listen well, on the orders of the Führer, the 6th Army has to hold Stalingrad and the Volga front under all circumstances. Should, through an opening up of the flanks, a position of all-round defense become necessary, this will result in the holding fast of Stalingrad. The Army headquarters is to move to the area northeast of Kalisz. The 4th Corps, 297th Infantry Division, 371st Infantry Division and 29th Motorized Division of the 4th Panzer Army will come under the 6th Army. Colonel Winter, the speaker at the other end of the line, left a short pause as if to give me time to digest the Führer order. Then he went on, the Army High Command has even raised objections to the order that the necessary troop movements cannot be carried out for the forming of the cauldron. The necessary troops for closing the gaps between the right and left flanks of the army are not available, and it first has to be checked how far units can be extracted from the city front, there being no positions available to form a front, and wood for the construction of positions and bunkers is lacking. This order to a whole army is nonsense, I said. What happens then to our divisions still fighting west of the Don? According to Hitler's order, they should be led over the Don to the east, said Winter. But in spite of the Army High Command's attitude, Adam, see to securing the bridgehead and the Chur front. With that our conversation ended. It was obvious that my forces would be insufficient to hold the battle sector handed over to me. But what would happen to the surrounded 20th German and 2nd Romanian divisions? That was another dirty trick of the Army High Command. Had Paulus really to obey Hitler's orders? Should he, supported by his much better knowledge of our situation, not simply handle the matter independently and break out to the southwest before it was too late? The more I thought about it, the more certain I became. Paulus was a through and through disciplined and obedient soldier. He would rather perish with his army than become a mutineer. To me, inwardly, General Paulus represented a superior and humane being. I was very sorry for him in this deep conflict. I regretted not being able to be with him in his advance headquarters at Gumrak. The telephone sounded once more in this midnight hour. Paulus announced himself over the still intact telephone line. Resignedly he replied after my report, the encirclement is already closed, Adam. But, General, individual soldiers are still coming to us from the area east of the Don. The ring cannot be so dense. What use is that to us when we are firmly nailed to the city, he replied bitterly. From some of our exchange I gathered that the headquarters of Army Group E also shared Paulus's view on the necessity of a breakout, but no one there was willing to take responsibility. They had been more inclined to await new instructions than go against the Army High Command's orders. My fatigue finally won over my tormenting thoughts, but the sleep-bringing forgetfulness did not last long. About 2 o'clock I was woken up again. Standing in front of me was Colonel Arnold, the Army's intelligence chief. The commandant of Chur Station is not responding anymore. My radio troops report heavy rifle and machine gun fire from the direction of the railway line. I don't yet know what is happening there. The Mykosh combat team have sent scouts off to Chur Station. I jumped up off my mattress, get the local commandant of Nizhny Cherskaya as well as Gobel here immediately. Burning inside me was the need to look after the harassed soldiers streaming into the town, and their weapons and equipment, also the responsibility towards the heavily threatened 6th Army. Both the officers I had ordered came in. I briefed them on the latest developments. Captain Gobel, send out new scouts immediately. I must know precisely what the situation is at the railway station, or the foremost enemy elements are. Tell your scouts that the Maikosh combat team has also been sent towards Chur station. I ordered the local commandant to increase the sentries at the town exits and to patrol the ground between the town and the station with scouts. A call from the Maikosh combat team reported that there was still no news from the reconnaissance team. The colonel feared being surrounded by the enemy pressing forwards and southwards. I told him that at daybreak we would deploy a strong combat team on the flat ground west of Verchincherskaya, about 2 kilometers south of the railway line. I further told him to cooperate closely with Colonel Skakel's combat team and the Don bridgehead. Both combat teams concerned themselves with the railway bridge over the Don. Alerting the army staff, reporting to Army Group B, and reconnoitering and marking the route to Tormossen were the next measures that I took. Meanwhile, the scouts reported that the enemy's foremost elements had reached the railway line either side of Chur station, and were sending out scouts southwards. However, these had already withdrawn when we opened fire on them. The new day, the November 23rd, was dawning in the east. Officers from the staff were there, already disentangling jammed vehicles at the town's southern exit. The drivers were sullenly, reluctantly, complying with their orders. Then, like a blow, an officer cadet remarked that the Russians had already reached the railway line. Dull apathy turned into hectic activity. More than any order, fear drove the utmost haste. Captain Gobel had established a collecting point for stray soldiers in the Nizhny Churskaya school. From all sides, large and small groups marched in under the direction of our officer cadets. They had arms and ammunition with them, so that they could immediately be formed into companies and battalions. The instructing officers from Suvorovsky were deployed as battalion commanders, the pupils as company and platoon commanders. The new formations were immediately sent off to their set positions. By midday, the 1st battalions were ready for action west of Verchincherskaya. Captain Gobel took over their command. He could never have dreamed of having to command such a colorfully varied and thrown-together collection of troops. Most of the soldiers came from the rear services, the field post service and the organization tote. In addition, there were a few strays from the attacking divisions and men returning from leave. Their arms consisted of rifles and pistols, as well as 3 light machine guns. That was hardly very encouraging, but all had the earnest wish to help their comrades surrounded in the area between the Volga and the Don. The 2nd quartermaster of the 6th Army, Captain Tumpling, confirmed to me that the cauldron was complete. He had taken part in a defensive fight in Kalich and then observed during the flight in the Don bridgehead how the Soviet pincers had closed east of the town. Within a few hours, Nizhny Churskaya had emptied, the main roads were free again. I handed over the command of the staff to Colonel Sell and tasked him with moving to Tormossen. I remained in Nizhny Churskaya. My main concerns were anti-tank guns, mortars and tanks for the fighting units. Without these weapons, they were unable to offer the enemy any earnest resistance. Early that morning, I had already instructed our workshops in Tormossen by telephone to get all serviceable guns, tanks and machine guns ready as quickly as possible, latest by evening, and send them to Nizhny Churskaya. In fact, the first arrived at noon. Colonel Sell supported this action energetically after his arrival in Tormossen. He literally cleared out the workshops, supervised the repair facilities day and night, and produced arms and ammunition almost daily. I was driving to visit the combat teams, traveling in a jeep back along the same route I had come by more than 24 hours before. Already on the day before, one could talk of there being order on the road. Now I found no trace of the wild confusion of the headless flight that had occurred. The stream of shocked soldiers was not over. Now a group of about 20 German and Romanian soldiers approached my car. All were without weapons, unshaved and tattered. "Where do you come from? What unit do you belong to?" I asked a German non-commissioned officer. "We are from the 4th Panzer Army. We have lost our units. The Russians are right behind us, Colonel." "That is nonsense. You can see that I am driving to where you came from. A new front has already been established there. Why did you not join their ranks? Are you going to leave your comrades in the lurch, and where are your weapons?" "We are drivers, Colonel. Our weapons are in the vehicles." "And where are your vehicles?" We had to leave them behind in a village, otherwise we would never have got through. The Russians were already everywhere. We have been on the way now for 2 days without getting anything to eat. Report to the town commandant in Nizhny Cherskaya, which is the place behind the strip of woodland. You will get rations there, and do something to smarten yourselves up first, then the world will look different again." Astonished looks met mine as my vehicle drove off again towards Verkhncherskaya. Apparently, it was baffling to them how one could overcome the horrors. For my part, on the other hand, I found it incomprehensible how quickly the morale of our troops could have sunk so low. How soldiers could let themselves become so low who only a few months before had gone victoriously through the Don steppe. Was it only fear of life in the raw? Was it the dread of imprisonment? Was it the question of the sense of this war? I met Colonel Mikosh in Verkhncherskaya. His battle group lay only 1,000 to 1,500 meters from the enemy. But they had well-built bunkers and trenches. The off-duty men could rest and sleep in houses behind the fighting line, although occasionally fired on by Katyushas. Mikosh had hardly a gun or a mortar with which to reciprocate. Next I finally sought out Colonel Tskakel's battle group in the Don bridgehead. They had occupied positions on the edge of the woods and were constantly being attacked by weak Soviet forces, so that the soldiers were getting no respite. The lack of heavy weapons was even more alarming here than with Mikosh. "Without artillery support this cannot last any longer," said Colonel Tskakel, "and even better would be some tanks. The workshops in Tormosin will send all serviceable heavy weapons with ammunition to Nizhny Cherskaya. Tomorrow I hope to be able to help you a bit," I assured him and made a few remarks about the defensive measures encountered earlier on. Then I drove on to the newly established battle group Gobel, dug in accordance with orders, west of Verkhncherskaya, about 2 kilometers south of the railway line. Captain Gobel had only one field kitchen for about 1,500 men. This was far from adequate, but there were several field kitchens on the road back. I authorized Gobel to take all that he might need of the vehicles, equipment, ammunition, and weapons. The situation was tricky on his left flank. His scouts had reported not encountering any German troops for far and wide. "The enemy has only to advance along any road to the Chur and we will be sitting in a mousetrap, Colonel. Immediately upon my return I will call upon the army group for support. You will then get immediate support from me. Have you telephone contact with Nizhny Cherskaya?" "All in order, Colonel. I spoke with the switchboard an hour ago." I drove back somewhat calmer. Our situation without heavy weapons was naturally scary, but if the enemy would only leave us in peace for a few days, we could strengthen the front. To this end it occurred to me to give the battle groups a joint command. This would increase their punch should there be a Soviet attack. I decided to speak to Army Group that same day. During my absence, one of our training officers from Suvorovsky had organized 3 further companies out of stragglers. These I immediately sent off under his command. In connection with the Gobel battle group, they secured the roads running along either side of the Chur. Another danger point had been reinforced. This relieved my concern somewhat. I also provided another welcome addition to the front. The town commandant reported that on the November 22nd a complete bakery company and a butcher platoon had arrived in Nizhny Cherskaya. They had escaped from the enemy tanks, a situation they should not celebrate too soon. Now I incorporated them into my battle groups. This was only a small part of Arno von Lenski's memories. I am waiting for your discussions in the comments. Also do not forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel. See you all soon for now.